know this is a view that you miss. Walking up to room 919, coming around the corner, and saying, let's do some math. So if you take a look, today we are really stepping up a notch here. People might think we've met our match here, but we still have a way to do this factoring, the opposite of FOIL. And we're going to go through, we're going to do our first example here, showing you that as we start getting numbers in front of the x squared here, really starts opening up a lot of the different possibilities of different option of numbers. We're starting off with two numbers that are prime at the very front of this here. So we have 3 and we have 2, which again, the only way to get 3 is going to be 1 times 3, and the only way to get 2 at the back end of this can be 1 times 2. Somehow, what we add in the middle is going to have to come out to be our negative 7x right there. And so you're going to see that there could be a lot of possibilities. Eventually, I'm going to show you a little secret that I found as I was searching the internet for different ways to also do this, because again, there are a lot of possibilities. If we're just trying to get the answer, ultimately, I'm going to show you another little shortcut. And so not always one for shortcuts, but we'll show you that. The great thing is that eventually down the road, when we're solving this for what's called quadratic equations, there's a formula called the quadratic equation that's going to help us in a lot of ways also with these quadratics. So let's just jump right in. If we take a look, we are on page 392 right now, and so this is example number 2 on page 392 there on the bottom, and there's part A and part B for this one, and so we're going to look at the part A at first, and then we'll look at the part B of this one. So if we take a look, right, we're trying to figure out what times what, right, is going to end up doing this when we do factoring. If I didn't have the 3 in front, we would just put an x and an x. The thing that's making it more challenging is now we have numbers in front there. We probably know that eventually we're going to have our x and our x there. So let's go ahead and we'll just set that up so we at least have those numbers right there. Now we just have to start looking at signs and figuring out what we're going to do here. The other thing we may also know is that our first number is going to be our 3x squared. Our last two numbers are going to be our 2. Right? And so when we multiply two numbers to get a positive 2, there's going to be basically two options. One is going to be 1 times 2, and a positive times a positive is going to be positive. The challenge, if we're looking ahead, is that if we have a positive here and a positive here, and we add those two together, it's not going to be a negative. So remember that the other option is to get positive 2 could be negative times a negative. And so almost by default, we know that there's probably going to be a subtraction here or a negative, because we're going to have a negative 1 times a negative 2, which will be positive 2. But when we add things together, we have the chance of having a negative, because if they're both positive, there's no chance of getting a negative. So again, we're having to kind of be kind of like a Sherlock Holmes here, detective, and looking ahead at what the possibilities are. So if we remove this here in a non-sophisticated way, just drop that down on the ground there, right? We start taking a look, and we realize that the only way to get 3 is going to be 1 times 3. And the only way to get 2, as we just realized, is going to be a negative 1 times a negative 2. Now we just have to start playing with where are all the different places that these two numbers can go to make this work. So if I put my 1 right there and my 3 right there, I do have 1 times 3 is going to be my 3x squared. If I put my 1 right here, which is going to be as my subtracting 1, and I put my 2 right here, or my negative 2, right? So I have 1x minus 1, because I know that my negative 1 times negative 2 is going to be my positive 2. I now have to see, does that end up when I add these together, does it come out to negative 7? Right? That's where our challenge is going to be. So if we take a look, I'm going to actually look at my math here. So 1 times 3 is going to be 3x. Right? And then I take a look at my 1 times negative 2. We know that's going to be our negative 2. In the middle, I'm going to scoot this down here. So that's going to be 3x. All right, if I do my first outer, so 1 times negative 2x is going to be negative 2x. My inner, negative 1 times 3 is going to be negative 3x. And then my last two, negative 1 times negative 2, that's going to definitely be a positive 2. Now you can see, but we have a little bit of a problem right here, because negative 2, right, or minus 2 and the minus 3 does not come out to minus 7. It's minus 5. So that one doesn't work. So we've got to go through and we've got to look at some options here. So I'm going to get rid of that. That didn't work. So now I'm going to take a look at it, and I'm going to look at my other option. If I have the 1 and 3 here, I'll just keep it in place. Then I'll just do a flip-flop, a dance with the 2, negative 2, and the negative 3 over here. and see if that helps us. Again, there's only two options as I'm doing this here, is that the -2 could dance with a 3, or the -2 could dance with the 1x there. So there's only two places. You can see that this, if we had a lot of options, there's a lot of combinations, this gets pretty crazy. But in this case, if we just double check our math here, we know that the 1 times 3 is going to be my 3x. I know that my -2 times my -1 is going to be my 2. So what I'm really worried about is in the middle here. Is it going to come out to -7? So we take a look, and that's -2 times 3 is going to be -6x. 1 times -1, right, is my -1x. And if I add those both together, it does come out to -7. So this does have to be, right, so it really comes down to the first numbers we know are going to be correct because we just chose the factors. The second to be correct, it really comes down to when we're adding those middle numbers right there. And for the way they present in the book, it's literally just kind of making a chart and a table and just going through and looking at all your options. The thing that's kind of challenging is, what if you forget an option and just keeping track of all your options, so you have to find some kind of systematic way to go through. And eventually, I'm going to show you a little secret that I learned online as I did this, and there'll be a video link to kind of make sure that you find these right off the bat. If all we're trying to do is make sure to find them, then that's what we're going to do, is show you a shortcut for doing this. But in this case, all right, our answer would be 1x minus 2x in parentheses, 3x minus 1, and that looks like when we do the math, it comes out to this answer here. So that is factored right there. So it's 1x minus 2 in parentheses, 3x minus 1, and we just double checked it, and that is our answer. All right, so here we go into one more example. We're looking at the first part of example number 2, and we're seeing that on this one, again, we doesn't have to go very far before we start getting numbers. We have lots and lots of different options where you're trying to figure out what times what is our first number, and then what times what is our second number, and then it has to add to the middle. Eventually, I'm going to show you kind of just a little trick, like I said. There's going to be a video that I'm going to point you to that does, I think, probably a way better job than even I could do. I just went through it. I didn't believe it. Tried it a bunch of times, and it always works. Because you're going to see, even from example number 4, that these charts, kind of making sure you have everything, can get really, really, really long. So we're going to show you what they present in the book, but then we're going to show you, again, a little shortcut that I think works really well. So if we take a look, right, we had to break this one up and try to factor it. First thing we always want to do, make sure that, first of all, there's no negative in the very front. If there is, we have to pull out a sign. So yesterday we did that. So it just causes the sign to flip on everything, and so we pull out a negative. It makes this sign flip, makes this sign flip. But again, there is no negative in this case, so we are good to go. The next thing we have to do is figure out, right, could I have pulled out a 4, right? Do all these have a 4 in common? No, so I can't do that. So I've got to go through and I've got to do something to try to factor this if it's factorable. And so what we're going to do is, first thing is I get my sophisticated high-tech papers out of the way here and just drop them to the ground. We're going to take a look that there's a couple different ways to get 4, right? We could have 2 times 2. We could also have, if I flip this over, we could also have 1 times 4 is my other option, right? So 1 times 4 or 2 times 2. The only way to get 3 is going to be 1 times 3, right? And so again, there's no other way. So what I know is that for my first number, I may not know anything else right now, right? If I wish I could go back a few steps and just a few days ago where it was nice and easy, but now we're taking a look, and right, there's got to be some way that I can get, right, 1 times 4 is my way to get 4, or it could be 2 times 2. Right, and again, this is a positive 1 right there, so it's the same as a plus or a positive 1. All right, so as I look at that, all right, so my options are 1 times 4 is going to be 4. My 1 times 3 is 3, and that's really, for the 3, the only option. Or, as we said, another way to get 4 is going to be 2 times 2 would also get 4. All right, so if I look at that, now I've just got to kind of go through. I've got to look at my options. If you look in the textbook right there on page 392, it's got a little chart that's going to show all these different options. So I'm going to start off with the first one, which is 2 times 2. And right, as we know, if I put a plus there because they're positive, right, I know that 2 times 2 is going to be 4. I know that 1 times 3 is 3. So the only thing I have to worry about really is in the middle right here. So I go 1 times 2, right, that's going to be 2x. If I do my outside here, right, 3 times 2, that's going to be 6. Right, 6x. And I know by looking at this that there's no way to take 2 and 6 to get 13. So that must not be the option. So we can take the 2 times 2 out of the way and know that that's definitely not going to work. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead now, and we have to look at our other options for getting 4. All right, so I take a look, right, and I look at my other options now. I just kind of exhaust them and go through all my different options. Right, 1 times 4 is going to be my 4x. 1 times 3 is going to be my 3. Now I just have to figure out, does this middle part end up working out? So 1 times 4 is going to be 4x. 1 times 3 is going to be 3x. And when I do that, 4 plus 9 doesn't come out to 13x. So that doesn't work either. If you look again on page 392, they've got a little chart there. They've looked at these options. So we're looking, it's really the middle that's kind of determining whether this is going to work or not, because we know the first and second term multiply together to get the answers because we factored those. So my other option is, all right, if it's not the 1 and 4, right, then maybe I can look at the other option, because again, the numbers can either dance with this side or that side. There's only 2 places they can really be. So now I take a look at this, and I go 1 times x is going to be 1x. I go 4 times 3 is going to be 12, right, x. And when I do add those together, it comes out to 13. So that must be my answer right there. So 4x plus 1, in parentheses, times 1x plus 3. If I don't believe it, again, if I go through my FOIL or factor here, 4x times 1x is my 4x. 1 times 3 is my 3. And I know that 1x plus 12x comes out to 13. And so that's the only way it's going to work. Again, right, not very much in terms of a lot of different possibilities. And we've already got ourselves a list of different numbers to do. If you take a look at example number 4, right, which again, it has quite a few different options because they have both the -1 and 5, and then is there a -5 times 1? Lots and lots of different options. So take a look through those examples. We're going to do a few for you to practice down below on this fake quiz, and then we'll go ahead and we will do maybe one more practice, and then we'll move us on our way.